Everyone's lives could have ended in an infinite numbers of ways. It's never too late to pursue a dream. That is a quote from the famous novel, The Midnight Library. Now, The Midnight Library is a fantasy novel by Matt Haig, published on 13 August 2020, and the novel follows around a 36-year-old British woman unhappy in her dead-end life who is given the opportunity to experience lives she might have had if she had made different choices. But before we get into that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Amanda QURRATUAINI, and Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone else. I'm a student for SEKOLAH 2, and my name is Amanda QURRATUAINI. Today, I'll be telling you a story called The Midnight Library. Midnight Library is a novel made by Matt Haig, and it's a book mix of fantasy and science fiction. It also explores the themes of human mortality, happiness, and personal choices. Yeah. Nora Seed, a 36-year-old music store clerk, is struggling to cope with overwhelming regret about the state of her life. In a period of just over a day, Nora Cat dies. She loses her job at the music store. She has a confrontational run-in with her former bandmate, and she loses her lone piano student. Her brother Joe is avoiding her. Her best friend Izzy isn't responding to her text messages at all. And even her next-door neighbor, old Mr. Banerjee, says she doesn't need Nora to help him with his medication anymore. Her parents passed away. Her father when she was just a teenager, a mother just a few years ago. After her mother's death, Nora left her ex-fiancé, Dan, just 2 days before they were supposed to be married. Nora surveys her lives and sees only pain, grief, and regret. She decides that she has nothing left to live for. She leaves a note, makes a final post on social media, and attempts to end herself. When Nora awakes from her attempt, she finds herself in front of a strange building, almost like a cathedral. When she enters, all she can see in every direction is books. There were books that were stacked up to the ceiling, books that flew around. Sounds like a place of magic. But then she encounters Mrs. Elm, her beloved high school librarian who confronted her when Nora's father passed away. Mrs. Elm explains that Nora is in a place between life and death called the Midnight Library. She tells Nora that time doesn't move here, and when Nora examines her watch, she sees that it is frozen at midnight. Mrs. Elm introduced Nora to the Book of Regrets, which articulates everything Nora has regretted in her life. The other books contains infinite variations of Nora's life. Any book she chooses will allow her to see how her life would have turned out if she had made different choices. As soon as Nora feels disappointed in the life she visits, she will return back to the Midnight Library. Nora still wants to die and is uninterested in the library, but Mrs. Elm encouraged her to pick a book anyway. The first life Nora visits is the one in which she married Dan, and they own a pub together in the English countryside. In her life with Dan, Nora is impressed to see that they have accomplished Dan's dream of owning a pub in the English countryside. She quickly learns, however, that Dan cheated on her. And in the course of the interaction, Nora remembers how difficult her relationship with Dan often was. She wonders if they've outgrown each other, and she returns to the Midnight Library, where she's still filled with despair. Mrs. Elm coaches her to think of another life she might want to visit, and Nora chooses one in which she has kept her cat's Bolt inside, hoping he will live longer. In that life, she immediately finds that Bolt is dead beneath her bed. She returns to the Midnight Library, angry with Mrs. Elm. Mrs. Elm explains that Bolt would have died in any life because he had a heart condition. Nora learns that she was a good cat owner to Bolt. and her regrets about not taking good enough care of him disappear from the Book of Regrets. Nora continues to visit many iterations of her life. She sees that if she had gone to Australia with her best friend, then Izzy would have died in a car wreck on the way to Nora's birthday party. If she became an Olympic swimmer, as her father had wanted, her father would have lived much, much longer, but her mother would have died much sooner. In that life, Nora has all the trappings of power and is poised to give a talk about success to a room full of thousands of people. But she recognized that this successful life is lonely. And in many ways, she's still suffering there. Next, Nora sees the life she would have had if she had become a glaciologist, a dream she had when she was very, very young. There, she has a near-death encounter with a polar bear, and facing death makes her realize that she truly, truly wants to live. She also encounters another person who is sliding between lives, Hugo, who shares his observation about the nature of reality. She leaves that life to experience what it would be like if her band with her brother, the Labyrinth, had made it big. She's a wildly successful rock star with millions of Instagram followers. She briefly enjoys the trappings of fame before learning that she's embroiled in a complicated series of scandals and tragedies. When she learned that Joe died from a drug overdose 2 years prior, she is transported back to the Midnight Library. Nora slides into alternate life many times, and she begins to enjoy the process of learning more and more about herself and the world. However, after a while, she begins to lose herself and feels as though she wants to find a life that she can settle into. She slides into a beautiful life with her loving husband Ash and her daughter Molly, a work she enjoys and a nice home. It's a life filled with love and ease, and she reminds herself again and again that it is a good life. As she visits the neighborhood from her root life, Nora sees the positive impacts her small actions have had on others. Nora realizes that no matter how good her life with Ash and Molly is, she didn't earn it. Though she badly wants to stay and feel deep love for her family, Nora can't stop herself from sliding back into the library. Distraught, Nora begs Mrs. M to return her to the good life. But the Midnight Library is falling apart. The books are all catching on fire. Nora's watch starts keeping time again, and Mrs. Elm says it's possible that Nora is dying in her root life. But Nora deeply wants to live. She races to the book of her root life and writes, "I am alive," on one of its blank pages. With that, the Midnight Library disappears. And Nora finds herself on the brink of death in her root life. She seeks out help from her neighbor and ends up in the hospital. Nora reconciles with her brother, who begs her not to leave him again, and with Izzy, who wants to catch up. Nora is filled with gratitude. She visits Mrs. Elm, and they play a game of chess, reflecting that one never knows how the game or life will end. That is basically the summary, from my perspective, of the Midnight Library. The importance of the Midnight Library, the moral values that I learned from the Midnight Library as a citizen, as a human being, is to appreciate whatever you have in your life. Never, ever, ever look past on the ones you love. Never, ever, ever. And make sure that you spend enough time with your loved ones. Don't waste time. Time is gold. Time is precious. That is all from me. Once again, I am Amanda QURRATUAINI, a student from SMK Sri Lanka 2, and a 17-year-old girl who loves to read books. Again, a very good day to everyone, and I wish to see you all next time.